What's up guys, in this video we will talk about Lodash library. I have been using it extensively and I will give you compelling reasons why you should too. So let's start. So I have already installed Lodash, or you can use npm install Lodash to install it, and constant. Let's import it. Okay, and let's compare two objects. And it gives you false. Right now, even if you use double equal to or you use triple equal to, it will give you false. Okay, and so how do you compare two objects? So there's not an easy way in JavaScript directly that you can compare them. So Lodash provides you something called is equal, and you can use is equal and you can pass the objects that you want to compare, and it works. So you might have used this function math.max. Now if I pass some values to it, it finds the maximum of the given arguments. It works fine as long as you are providing numbers to it, but let's say that if I provide something which is undefined or null, it stops working. So you can still use _.max and it works with numbers, it works with undefined, it works with not a number, null, and empty strings, everything. Just a small mistake. It takes an array as an argument instead of. Okay, this works. Now this was _.max. So let's say you want to find out the sum of some numbers. Let's say constant. Let's say you have some numbers with you and you want to find out the sum of these numbers. Now there is no math.sum which comes with JavaScript, so there is no function like that, so you don't have much of a choice but to write your own function. So what you can do is you can write you can use reduce function, and it takes two arguments, previous and next. So you have to provide a function to reduce this array. So you can say p plus n and the initial value is 0. So which means that you start with 0. So p is 0, n takes the first argument 1, and then it keeps adding the numbers. Or you can directly use the Lodash sum function and you can pass the array and it works fine, right? So now let's say that you want to remove some numbers from an array. So let's say you want to remove 3 and 6 from the array. So one way is that you can use filter. So you can say filter out all the elements which are not included in the to remove array includes and limit, right? So this is one way of doing it, but there is another function which comes with Lodash. You can use pull to remove elements, multiple elements. So you can say arr comma and you can pass the elements that you want to remove and it works fine. Or you can spread the array if you have an array, and this also works. So just now we saw how to use filter. Now filter is used to extract the elements that we want from an array. Sometimes we don't want to filter, but we want to partition, which means that we are looking to divide the elements in two parts. So for example, let's say we have an array called stocks. So it have a stock and it have some return. So let's say the ABC stock gives you a 10.5% of return. Similarly, XYZ gives you 8.6% of return. And what you're looking for, the stocks which gives greater than 8% of return. You want to separate the stocks which gives you greater than 8% of return and the stocks which gives you less than 8% of return. So you don't want to filter here, you want to partition it in two sets, right? So how to do that? There's something called partition which comes with a Lodash, and you can use it. So you have to provide the array that you want to partition. So you can provide the array that you want to partition and a function that filters the first partition, the remaining element goes to the second partition. So I will write the function. So the element dot return should be greater than 8. Okay. Now, if you see the result, it contains two array now. If you see result 0, it contains the first partition, which is the stocks which gives you greater than 8% of return, and the second partition which gives you less than 8% of return. So you can use partition to partition an array in two parts. Now let's talk about the next utility function. So let's say you have some elements, it's called duplicates. Okay, now I want to remove the duplicates. I want only the unique elements from this array. So how I can do it? So one way, the JavaScript way that you can do is you can directly create a set out of it. So set always contains unique elements, and then when you spread it and again you make an array out of it. So this is the shortest way of doing it. More simpler way is that you can say array.from and then you can say new set and duplicates. Okay, so again it creates a set which contains unique elements, and then from the set a array is created. Or you can use the unique function of Lodash and you can directly pass duplicates, and it also works. Cool. Now let's say we have so we have this object keyboard, and we have some keys, some properties, and we want to pick some properties from this keyboard object. So how we can do it? Well, the Lodash provides you a pick utility. So you can pass pick, the object name, and the array of properties that you want to pick. So for example, let's say I just want the type, and let's say the key type, and let's say the price. Okay, so only those values will be taken out. It will be picked from the given object. There is a similar utility which is called omit, and it works in a similar fashion but in the reverse way to pick. So you provide the object to it, and let's say out of all the properties I just don't want the RGB and color properties, I want all the rest of them. So I can do a omit on it. So I will say color is not required and RGB is not required, and it works. So we just, now this is better visible, right? So color and RGB are removed. Cool. Now let's try one of my favorite utility functions, which is map values. So let's say you have this data, people. So there are so many people, and so now we have a people object, and so the income and expenses of the individuals are given. So we want to find out the savings of every individual. So how we can do it? We will say constant savings equals to an empty object, and then for every key in people you can say savings key people. So you have to subtract income and expenditure. And so if you see savings, then you can see the savings, right? Now there's a much better way of doing it, which is _map values. Now map values, you have to pass the object first, and then you have to pass the function. So let's say that every so the element actually refers to the income expense object. Okay, so for every object, the value object, you can say element.income minus element.expenses, and it works. This is a much elegant way of doing the same thing. I'll just explain it again. What map values does, that it is mapping through the values, and if you look at the object, then the values are this income, the income and the expense object. So we are mapping through these values, and for every key you can perform a function. So you are doing an income minus expenditure on each of the values. So much simpler way of doing the same thing. Now again, one of my favorite utilities, I use it often, which is set. So let's take an example. So let's say we have this object and I want to add a pin code in the address. Now I can do it directly. me.address.pincode equals to, let's say, 305004. Now this works fine, right? So this pin code is added to the address object. But let's say if I remove the address object from it, now this no longer works because there is no address, and the immediate key should be available. So which means that to do this me.address.pincode, the address key should be available in the me object. So it is not possible to directly do it. Okay, so the only way is that either you do with you assign it an empty object and then you do me.address.pincode. Okay, but there is a better way of doing it, and which is using the set utility. And so you can use you can pass the object and you can pass the path. So you can say address.pincode and then you can pass the value, and it works, right? And even if the address is here, let's say, okay, this still works. Okay, let's talk about next set of utilities. So let's say you are creating a game, and so you have a dice. So the possible values that can come out of a dice are 1 to 6, and you want to randomly choose a number from the dice. So how do you do it? You can of course do it using vanilla JavaScript, but in Lodash you can use the sample function and you can pass dice to it. So it randomly picks a number from the so every time you change it, it will randomly pick a number from the array. Let's say you want to pick two numbers from the array, then you can use sample size function and you can pass the dice and you can pass the number of elements that you want to sample. So let's say 3. So it gives you 3 numbers from the given array. There's another very useful function which is shuffle. So if you have so generally what happens that we want uh, the array or the data that we have in a particular order, either ascending or descending, but sometimes we want them it in a random order. So we can use shuffle for it, and we can pass dice to it, and it just shuffles the array. So it's a random order of the elements, and you can use it instead of writing your own shuffle function. You can directly use it from the Lodash library. There is another useful function which is .range, range function, which generates a range from a given initial and final values. So the final value is not included. So starting from 3 till 8, and 8 is not included. So you can create a range of elements using the range function. So let's talk about the random function now. So if you have used math.random, it always returns a random number between 0 and 1. So let's say if you want to generate a random number between 100 and 500, so how you will do it? So 100 plus math dot seal, and then math.random, and into 400, right? So the first one gives you a number till 400, and then you add 100 to it. So it gives you a random number between 100 to 500. But you can do it much easily with the random function from the Lodash library. So you just have to pass the two values. So let's say now you want to generate an array of 4 random numbers. How you are going to do it? So there is a function called .times function. So it takes how many times you want to run that function, and then you just run that function. So you will see that provide the function, and it gives you 4 random numbers. So that was it. I hope you liked the video. There are so many other functions in the Lodash library that you can go to their official website and check out. And so that is it. And if you like the video, please share it and subscribe to the channel. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.